welcome back. So I'm going to share something that some of you may not know. It's this rule called the 738-55 rule. So let me think here. I'm going to find a volunteer. Robert Timmons, my guy. Let me think. Virginia, where are you? What's your chapter? Is it? Hang on, Christopher Newport.
No.
No.
Old Dominion University.
I was in the general vicinity, wasn't I?
Yes, sir.
Geographically speaking. Oh, well, Justin Verlander's from there. So here's what I want you to do. When you think about communication, there's three ways that you experience communication. If you had to guess what those three or some of those three are, what would they be?
Through methods of communication, I'd say verbal.
You're right. Hang on. So that would be like your content. Okay. What else?
Literature, like writing.
No, like even from me today, like how do you experience communication? So you've got my content. So those are the words, right?
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Like ideas that you're conveying. Well, that'd be content too, wouldn't it?
Yep.
I don't really.
I'll give you some help. Tone. So your tone of voice, and and body language.
Body language. Okay.
I got to get rid of this black marker. This is dying on. So there are three ways. There's three ways that you really experience communication with someone: their content, the tone of their voice, and the body language. And so back in the day, I think it was around the 70s, researchers at UCLA said, you know what? We want to know, like, where is a general audience? What is their communication preference? So they went out en masse and they said, hey, everybody, there's three different types of how you can experience communication. Of those three, which one is your favorite? And they identified and came up with the 738-55 rule. Very important in leadership, meaning one of these is 7, one of these is 38, and one of them is 55. Ivan, all the way in Kalamazoo. Ivan, my guy. What up, dude?
Hi. What's up, man?
So if you had to guess content, the words, what do you think? 7, 38, or 55%?
38.
38? All right. And you think tone is?
7. Actually, no, that one's like 55, and then the other one's 7.
Body language would be 7?
Yeah.
Got it. Cool. Very good. Thank you so much. Let's see here. Khalid.
How are you?
Hey, I'm great, brother. So content, what do you think? Do you agree?
I would say 7.
7 with content. What about tone?
38.
38. And then body language?
Actually, I will switch that 30 with the body language with the tone. So the tone would be 55 and 38 for the body language.
Got it. You know what they tell you in standardized tests is to always trust your intuition. Content, I'll use a different color marker here. Here's how it played out. Content was 7%. Tone was 38%. And your body language was 55%. Why does this matter for you as a leader? If you are above the line, that authentically takes care of your body language, right? Think about it. Authentically takes care of it. Done. So now, if I am being above the line, by the way, typically speaking, not for everybody, but typically speaking, my tone is taken care of just by my mindset and how you experience me in my relationship to align. That tells me I could say all of the wrong things, but how you experience my heart in a moment, you will give me grace. I could say the wrong stuff and you could actually give me some particular grace. 7% on content. Interesting. Where we spend most of our time with CEOs is on their tone. So if for you, I have a natural upbeat tone, right? It's not always like that, but that's my natural setting, is more upbeat. Some of you have that too. You've got it made. Some of you, think to yourself, does this sound like you? Would you say, like, I'm a pretty bold communicator, I'm straightforward, I'm going to tell you like it is, pretty blunt, but you definitely know where I stand, and I'm in, right, and I will openly share. If that sounds like you, odds are you are what we call someone with a natural assertive tone. The number one misunderstood tone out there is the natural assertive tone. Your heart may be like, hey, look, you have really positive intention, but the way in which your tone and how you're delivering language will shut down an audience. That tone matters. Sometimes, especially if you just think about if I'm being stereotypical, I got deer in the backyard. How about that? If I'm being stereotypical, I'm going to say that typically the Northeast has a more assertive tone than the United States. It just is what it is. So what does that mean for our chapters in the Northeast or people who are from the Northeast? So let's say I'm from the Northeast, but I go to a chapter that's in Arizona, right? And I've had people tell me like, I don't know, I feel like I'm regularly misunderstood, or there's just a rub there. Actually, it's how people experience you and your tone. So it's important that I would say about 2/3 of your time is in an upbeat, curious, inquisitive tone. And when you have to, you can flex to a more assertive tone, but using that with intentionality. Because in leadership, it's about tuning in an audience, not tuning them out. Now, I want to share, has anyone ever, it's kind of hard with so many people. There's a book that's really worth reading. And the book, actually, Tom Brady reads this book every January. It's called The 4 Agreements. Add that to your list. There are 4 agreements that's come out in this book, literally, that TV reads them all the time. The 4 agreements: be impeccable with your word. Makes sense. Be good on the word. Don't take anything personally. That's a big one. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best. Those are the 4 agreements. So my wife and I specialize in culture. What is it? That's the most intangible thing out there that we help to make tangible. It's really hard to do that. And there are 2 things that really erode culture, and that can be culture in your chapter or culture in a corporation, 20 years from now. One are stealth expectations. Stealth expectations are the expectations that you have that you actually haven't shared, or someone hasn't shared. A quick story on that is one of our clients, she was telling me a story about how she brought her husband back to meet her family. They live a long ways away. And growing up as a child, her family's tradition was on Saturday morning at 9 a.m., her family would all get together for a big breakfast, a big family breakfast at her parents' house. So like extended family would come over, almost like Thanksgiving every Saturday morning, pancakes, the whole nine, right? And her husband didn't come downstairs for breakfast. He was upstairs reading a book and drinking some coffee and enjoying his moment. He never came downstairs. And then later that day, he's like, hey, what's going on? She's like, I can't even look at you. She goes, she's like, don't even talk to me. And she took her love away from her husband, right? And when I taught her about stealth expectations, she started laughing. She's like, Ryan, I never told him the expectation that he's downstairs at 9 a.m. for breakfast. He didn't know. That's not his fault. There are many expectations that you have of each other and that exist in your culture, or in your chapter's culture, that need to come forward. As you're leading, when you can air those expectations. Give you a real life example. NFL team president. I listened to him share, and as he's sharing, I'm able to synthesize. I'm like, oh, do you mean to tell me of your senior staff that just all your major request for them is to be a great teammate? Is that it? He's like, yes. I'm like, well, the problem is you haven't told them that. And the second problem is you haven't defined what it means to be a great teammate for them. Because if you have 5 members of your senior staff, there might be 5 different responses, but the ones who actually matters is yours, because that's how you're holding them accountable, or you think you're trying to hold them accountable to a standard that doesn't exist. Those are stealth expectations. So the 2 things that erode culture: stealth expectations, 1, and the second one are stories. Those are assumptions, negative narratives. I walk down the hall, I see Casey in the chapter. Casey doesn't look at me. Casey hates me and he's going to kick me out of the chapter. I'm up for standards board. People create that. They create that mindset all the time. And they're taking things personally, and they have these negative stories and these negative narratives. That's very important for you to know. And reading that book, The 4 Agreements, will certainly serve you. Now, a little bit on leadership. I want to get back. If I have more time later today, I'll hit more guiding principles. It's hard. You know, we're together dealing with technology. I think we've got it all squared away now. And I've got, 2 weeks worth of material, and I'm just trying to cherry pick a few things that you can deploy, specifically the mindset of being above the line. And I want you to be intentional with your tone. Just work on that. Really work on that. Obviously, your E, and I want you to be a we first kind of guy. So you actively seek perspective and ask questions. We're about to break in small groups. In this small group, I'm going to give you 20 minutes. And Alex, when they break in small groups, this will be by chapter. So I'm going to give you 20 minutes. And then here's what we're going to do. I want you to identify this. I want you to start by this. Success. How do you define success for the year ahead for your executive council? We know that we led a successful year when I want you to be forward thinking on that and speaking in committed language. When you did what? So basically, in this moment, if you went back in this moment in 2024 and you reflected back in the last 12 months, we know that we did a great job as an executive council because we did this, and this. What are those things? And really want you to identify, again, how you define success as your group. So I'm going to give you 20 minutes. We're going to start you there. And then I've got another prompt that I want you to going that will continue on. I'll see you in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. See you soon. So I think everyone's back. We were in breakouts, and I think the breakouts now are over. So here's what happens next. So let's just recap. You had a conversation, and your conversation was about defining success. And I asked you to write that down. Good. Then we transition to, well, what's working? That's really, you've created a keep list. What would we want to keep doing? Like, what are the things that are working? And that next list you created is, well, what isn't working? Right? So there are some things that aren't working there. So here's what I want you to do. You're going to go back into small groups one more time, and then we're going to get ready for a break after that. We're going to come back together. But in your small groups, how do I want to do this? Yeah, let's do this. In your small groups, here's what you're going to do. You are going to have your written narrative of how, I want you to finalize and make sure you got it squared away, the written narrative of how you define success. So someone needs to be, you might be running parallel paths here. Because when we come back, I want you to put that in the chat field because I want to read it. There's that. Then you have your whole list of keeps. I want you to identify as a group, however many you listed, identify your top 5. Like if there were 5 things that we kept, what would they be? So take the instructions. 1 is make sure you have a written narrative that your chapter president will insert. If there is no chapter president, then figure it out. We'll insert in the chat field when we come back after this breakout. The next thing, identify 5 of your keeps, 5 items of the what's working. You have a request there to keep that going. You're giving yourself a formal charge without even realizing it in many instances. There's that. By a show of hands, you don't have to hit any magical buttons. How many of you ever deal with people in that chapter who seem to complain? Just complainers. Is anyone? Or is that just me when I was chapter president? Like every hand is like, right, okay. Let me teach you a coaching and facilitation technique that nips complaining in the bud. So we know that complaining is below the line. We talked about that, right? It's up there, wherever I put that sheet of paper. So when someone is below the line, neurologically, so in the brain, they're not capable of being fully present in communication in that moment. Oftentimes, they're either drifting away and they're thinking about why they're right and why you're wrong, or they're coming from a place of insecurity of I'm bad, I'm wrong. Anyway, we've lost that. So here's a facilitation technique that we do. We have to look at the early give, right? Which is the psychology of leadership. So we have to look at the psychology of complaining. So if I'm working with Oliver, and all of a sudden I'm working with Oliver, and we're having a conversation. Oliver's coming, talking about Stetson. Is that Stetson there? NJ Beta? Is that what that is? Or Stevens? What is that? Stevens. Yes. Here's the thing. If I'm having a conversation and we're having this conversation, he starts complaining. It's really hard for me to get him out of that. So this is what I do. Psychologically, what is behind every single complaint? Think about it. And I'm going to give you the answer to speed up time. All it is a request. Think about it. What's behind every complaint is a request. There is a request there. They don't know it, but they do know it. They don't have the language to it. So a request is actually above the line. So if I'm having a conversation with Casey, we're there in New York doing our thing, right? And Casey's complaining, I would say this, hey, Casey, so tell me, what's your request? That question forces Casey, at least in the moment, to be more solutions focused, to share what his I want to know what his request is, not why he's complaining about something. I want going for collaboration. It plays out. I say, hey, Casey, well, hang on. So, well, what's your request? Oh, Blanck, I don't have a request. I'm like, no, I just heard you. There's something there. I really want to hear what that actually is. What's behind every complaint is a request. When you are hearing someone going below the line and they're complaining, they're actually sharing. That is a white flag that says, I have a request, and they can't put language to it. So what does that mean for your small groups? Again, in your small groups, I want you to finalize how you define success. I want you to identify your top 5 keeps. I want you to identify your top 3 stops. What isn't working? We got to stop doing this. 3 of them. Got to know what it is, because the staff and your volunteers are going to ask you what they are. And then I want you to, of those 3 stops, you're going to transition each one of them into a request. So what isn't working is chapter attendance. Okay, so what's the request, right? Well, the request is we need to boost attendance. Yeah, but there's more to that. Well, we need to create more fun, and we need to create more value for our seniors to keep them around. Now we've got something. We've got to I need you to dig in. We can't be surface level here. So you're going to have 15 minutes, and then we're going to take a break. But we're going to come back together. Then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to hit the planning portion hard. Again, I want to make sure you have a written narrative of how you define success, because when we come back, you're going to, one from each chapter, we'll insert that in the chat. You're going to have 5 of your keeps. You're going to identify 3 of the what's not working. And of those 3, each of them you're going to transition each one of them into a specific request. I will see you. Alex, let's go ahead and drop them in, and I'll see you in 15 minutes. If you're already back, you can get started. What I want you to do is go to the chat field and give me 3 things. Identify your chapter. And then first thing I want you to identify, just separated by a period or a colon or something, would be how are you defining success? And I also want you to add what are your 3 requests that you have of your chapter for this next year. So one person from each chapter, go in the chat. Again, so what I want you, then we're going to take a break. So I want to have one person from each chapter identify. So how in the chat field, insert how you define success for the year ahead. In the same entry, I want you to identify your 3 requests. So separate it by like a period or a colon. So make sure you don't hit enter. So, because it'll get all kind of jumbled up. So again, put your name, like your chapter name, maybe a period, and then type have that go in there, and then we'll go from there. All right. Let me see what you got. And I hope it's very successful or very specific. So let's see what we got.